I shot a particularly good bass at Aberffraw last week, and I thought I'd make a video about the mark and go through some more tips and tactics. Now, Aberffraw is a truly magical place to dive, a church on a peninsula, nearly 1,000 years old, with some stunning scenery all around it. It's one of the few places in Anglesey that feels genuinely remote. Absolutely superb place to go. Even if you're just going for a picnic, I thoroughly recommend going there to dive. Now, there's a lot of species you can shoot at Aberffraw. It's one of those perfect marks. And I'm going to go through the different areas of the mark. I don't mind giving this mark away because I've dived there so much. I'm not that interested in going back again. Now, I normally start out hunting flatfish on the far side of the church. You can see here a little flounder in the sand. And we'll talk a little bit about the different areas you tend to find plaice and flounder in. If you look at this gravel here, you tend to find flounder over the gravel in very, very shallow water, often in less than a metre with flounder. Whereas the plaice do tend to be in slightly deeper water. You can see the sand here, these sand ripples. See me taking a plaice here. And a good point to mention is that in Viz that isn't so good like this, it's quite hard to size up your flatfish. Now this one was in size, but only just. And had I known the size more clearly, I probably wouldn't have shot it. You can see in the next clip a better flatfish being shot. This is in about 6 metres of water in better Viz, same session. But again here, this is the kind of typical area in these marks you'll find the plaice on sand like this. And a crucial thing to mention about flatfish as well is, look how there's no swell in either of these two clips. When you get a lot of swell and the sand's washing about on the bottom, you tend to not get that many flatfish. I think they just bury themselves a bit deeper, and they do definitely like much calmer conditions. Now, I do spend a lot of time hunting over the sand. Not many Spearos do. Just dropping down like this and drifting over. You can pick up bass like this actually, but in the evening like this, you often get lobster coming out onto the sand, and it's particularly cool to see them. You'll see one in this clip in a minute. This is about 9 o'clock at night in June. Just as that light level drops, the crustaceans do come out. You'll get brown crab in these areas as well. Not so many. Anglesey is much better for lobster. See a little girl in that clip there. And there's lobster out looking for some food. And what's always surprising about lobster is how quick they are. Once that tail gets going, they can scoot off pretty fast. You've got to be sharp to catch them. You can see this lobster here. Is it in size? Probably not quite. So I just let it go. I made the decision. There wasn't quite enough meat on this to make it worth taking, so I just dropped it and let it swim off. I do like eating lobster, but you know, they've really got to be a decent size to make it worth it. Now, one of the best places to hunt bass at these sort of marks is wherever there's stringweed. You'll see a bass just swim out over there, and stringweed is an indicator that there's much less swell in a particular area. So this area's got loads of boulders, and the stringweed just shelter it from the swell. You can see here I'm using this kelp below me as cover, so any fish in the stringweed below me can't see me quite as well. So the line that you swim in this shallow stalking, we'll talk about this more later in the video, is absolutely crucial. And the stringweed is a particularly good area for bass. You often get mullet in these areas as well. Not so much now. A few years ago there were far more mullet, but you'll see a bass just drift out of this stringweed here, and would have been quite an easy shot, but it's a bit small, probably about 45, 50 centimetres, so I decided to not take it. I'm looking for something bigger. Most of my biggest bass have come stalking gullies like this. See, I'm not even swimming. I'm making no movement whatsoever. I'm allowing the kelp to wash around and potentially reveal a bass in the gully. It's really crucial to not move. So often you'll be over these gullies maybe a minute or two, then a bass just suddenly comes out of the kelp in the gully. And here we're looking at holes in the kelp, a slightly different technique. These are more open, and you want to be swimming at a very slow pace over these, often using your left hand to propel yourself in the way that a fish's pectoral fins propels itself. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm not finning whatsoever in these clips. I'm wearing an 8mm wetsuit, which I like because I get cold easily. I've got no body fat, so I get cold very, very easily. And I'm very buoyant. My fins are sort of on the surface, and I'm making no movement at all. You can see James, my dive partner for this trip, he's finning far too much, to be honest, here. And look at how low his gun is as well. This could spook fish. Now, the thing about having your gun low like this is that if a fish were to appear near the surface, like a mullet or a bass coming by at pace, it'd be very hard to bring the gun up. But if your gun's up and you see a fish underneath you, it's easy to drop it down. And look here how my gun is very high up. Now I'm moving over some slightly deeper kelp here. You often get fish just off the drop-offs, and see how a bass just comes out from that drop-off there. And this is a particularly interesting clip, so I'm going to play the whole clip in the video. So I've got a number of bass, which you can probably see. I don't know what the quality is like on YouTube, but you can probably see a few bass just milling around over this little sand patch. There were 3 bass, and what you can see here is just how long you've got. You've got ages to shoot these bass. A lot of people think they've got to shoot straight away, but spearfishing is a bit like sex. Sometimes you've got to take your time and you get better results. And at any point I could have dropped one of these bass, but you've got to think about the range as well. When you're on the surface being washed around by the swell, you're shooting at a moving target from a moving platform while you're moving, and that's very, very difficult. It's like firing a rifle off a boat. Very difficult to hit anything at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drop down into the kelp, get myself to a nice position for an Aspetto ambush. And generally when you do this, the bass that you see milling around, they'll obviously shoot off to start with, but they'll generally come back in. You can grunt to call them back in, and you'll be presented with a much easier broadside shot from the bottom. It's far easier shooting fish off the bottom, and it's partly because you've got a bigger target area to aim at when they're side on rather than top down, but also because you're buffeted less by the swell and you've got yourself down. And if you look at what I'm about to drop down to here, dropping down to my body is in the sand patch, and then my torso's up slightly on the kelp, and I'm dropping down right between these 2 bits of kelp. So the precise position you drop down in Aspetto diving is really key. I'm just dropping down here, grunting a little bit, and you'll see the bass come in shortly. Well, I could have shot that first bass, but I let it swim. Be careful not to pull the trigger too quickly. The bass come round again. Get presented with an easy shot, but I'm looking for the biggest fish in the shoal. And you really have a lot of time. There's no need to pull the trigger too early. And I see what I think is the biggest fish, and I pick it out with a nice stone shot. You can see here, when I kill my fish, I kill them by cutting the throat. This is the halal style of doing it. I'm not a practicing Muslim myself, but I do believe it makes the meat taste a lot nicer when you drain the blood like this. Now, James is also stalking the kelp here, and you'll see him shoot a wrasse shortly. Now look at where my gun is. You can just about see the handle there. See how my gun is pointing directly away from him during this. Very, very crucial to ensure your gun is never pointed at the person, whether it's loaded or not. You can see here he's putting a nice stone shot on this wrasse from the top. There's a good bit of shooting there. I think he's been making these wrasse in the ceviche style. I've never eaten a wrasse myself, but I've heard they can be quite good with ceviche, not the lemon juice. It's good to see him get a good fish like this. Now, unfortunately, I didn't capture the shot of the massive bass that I shot. I don't film that much off the surface. You end up with loads of wasted footage, but I'll drop a few tips here about when you do shoot a big fish. This fish is in the kelp, and it's just flapping around everywhere. These bass do have quite sharp spines and sharp gill colours, so try and grab it if you can. Try and get your hands through the gills. Not always possible to do. And here the spear is tangled in the kelp. I'm taking my time underwater, making sure I don't start tearing the fish off. I've got my hand in the gills, but the power of the fish means I don't to get off the spear. So I'm trying to grab this. I'm going to try and brain it as quickly as possible. Obviously put it out of its misery and finish it off, but also make sure it doesn't off the spit. When you've got a good fish like this, the last thing you want, is to kill a fish like this and then not get it. See here the size of that fish, particularly good fish.
You just hold your wrasse up.
And James here with his nice wrasse that he shot just before. Now,
wetsuit.
this bass, it's quite an early season bass. It probably didn't weigh that much. The length of the bass would have made it maybe 8.5 pounds, but there actually wasn't much meat on it, unfortunately. Now, towards the end of the dive, we had an absolutely amazing experience diving with some rays. I really enjoyed that. And I heard reports from other people I know that there were a similar number of rays in other west coast marks of Anglesey, and it was just so cool diving with them. I love rays. I've never shot one. I know some people might take one and eat them as skate wings. I've heard the taste can be quite bad due to the ammonia, but it's really, really interesting diving them. They're such cool creatures, and they must not be edible to seals. A bit like dogfish, really, isn't it? All the tasty fish swim away quite fast when you see one. The ones you don't want to eat are much easier to hunt. But really enjoyable experience, and I thoroughly recommend you check out Aberffraw. As I said, it's a mark that I'm not that interested in diving much more because I've been there so much. I'm very happy to give this mark away. In a sense, I'm not really giving it away because it's such a big area that me telling you to go to Aberffraw doesn't really guarantee you'll get fish. Another top tip, always scale your fish by the sea, avoids messing up your sink. And overall, a superb dive session. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, drop it a like, drop me a comment, and subscribe to the channel. There's plenty more good videos coming out, so if you subscribe you won't miss them. And the next video after this one is going to be spearfishing at Kemlyn Bay, which is basically an abandoned nuclear power station on the north coast of Anglesey. I did some wreckage around that area, decided to spearfish near the power station. Absolutely stunning and wild dive, really, really cool session. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and you won't miss out on that one. I'll see you in the next video.